We're going to take a look at problem 522 from our book. I've gone ahead and set up the material already in Excel. Once you've done that, our first job is to calculate the cost of a standard and special product using the simple costing method. So first we need to figure out what the total indirect costs are, right? So we have total indirect, and we're going to take and say that that is the sum of these. So let's take this and say that would be the sum of these items right here. So our total indirect would be $403,000. We are going to use, as the problem indicates, the machine hours as a base. So the next job that we have to do is to calculate our machine hours. Now, looking up here, we know we have 400 standard print jobs, 200 special print jobs, and therefore we know that each job requires 10 hours each. So we're going to end up saying that we're going to take this 400 standard times $10 plus 200 special times $10. I'm sorry, I'm not $10, 10 hours. And we'll come up with 6,000 hours. So excuse me, I misspoke. We took 400 print jobs of the standard times 10 machine hours per job, and then we added 200 special jobs times 10 hours per job. And that gives us 6,000 total machine hours that are available. So therefore we know that to get an indirect cost rate per machine hour, we are going to take the 403 and divide by the 6,000 hours, which will give us $67.17 per machine hour. So we've calculated that. Now we need to go actually put it into the information that we have available. So once we've calculated the rate, our job, as the book states, is to calculate the cost of a job. So we need to go actually apply this to each of the jobs. So under a simple costing system, we have a standard job, and then we have the special jobs. The cost of supplies per job. We're told that that is $200 for a standard, and the author tells us it's $250 for a special. Now we need direct manufacturing labor per job, and we're told again that the labor is 180 for a standard and the labor is 200 for a special. And now we need to apply our indirect cost that we're allocating to each job. So the way that we'll do this is we will take our 10 hours for a standard and multiply that by 67.16 that we calculated to come up with that. We'll do it again. Now this happens to be 10 hours for a special. If it were different, obviously we would multiply whatever the hours are. We multiply it by the rate we calculated. I'm not sure that that actually came through with enough decimal points, so let's look at it like that. And then we will come up with our total cost per job using a simple job cost system. And we will add these together. Let's throw in a $sign. And we'll bring this across. So for part 1, where it says calculate the totals based on a simple job system, That's how we would do that piece. Moving along, we know that the simple system probably is not the most accurate way to reflect things, so we are going to go move on to step number 2 in the book, which says to calculate the costs of a standard and special job using activity-based costing. So in order for us to do that, we need to lay this problem out a little differently. So let's start with that. I'm going to start by putting the activity. In this column, we'll have the cost driver. Again, I'm just going to lay out our problem. We have standard, we have special, we have the total, which is given, and then we have the allocation rate. So let's set our problem up like this. Let me make this a little bigger, and that should do it. So in this particular case, we have machine operations. So again, if we sort of look up to the different kinds of things that we're looking at, we have the cost of machine operations. So let's do that first. So we're going to take this and call this machine operations. Whoops. So we know that the total machine operations is $150,000, and it tells us that the indirect costs are going to be increased with printing machine hours. So printing machine hours is what we're going to look at. So from that standpoint, we're going to put this as machine hours so we remember how we're going to spread this. So if we look at, for this particular area, the $400 jobs times $10 per job, that will give us the number of machine hours for that particular area. We're going to do the same thing for the special. So in the specials case, we have 200 jobs times 10 hours per job, so we'll end up with 2,000 machine hours. So from an allocation base, we're going to take and say that if we take our 150,000 and we're going to divide that by the sum of our hours. Oops, I need another parenthesis in there. Excel was smart enough to give me one. Thank you. So therefore, we should have $25 per machine hour. Now we need to go do that for what our next cost is. So the next cost up here says that it's setup. So we're going to say setup costs. And our setup costs, we are told, are $90,000. So let's go fill that in. It says that it increases with setup hours. So when we go over here to drivers, this should be setup hours. So therefore, to calculate that, we're going to take our, again, we have 400 standard print jobs, and we multiply that by the setup per hour to get 1,600 hours. We'll do the same thing for special. So we know we have 200 special jobs, and we multiply that by, again, it says set up hours per job, so we need 7 for each of those, and that'll give us 1,400 hours. Now we're going to go to our allocation base again. So we take 90,000 divided by 90,000 divided by the sum of this and this. And here's where it wanted me to do an extra parenthesis last time. Let me put that in. I guess it still wants another parenthesis. So that is $30 per setup hour. We're going to continue on. So the next thing that we need to take a look at, according to our costs that we were given, is our purchase order cost. So that's where we're headed. We are told that they are $36,000. It tells us that it increases with the number of purchase orders. So therefore our driver becomes the number of purchase orders. So we're going to go calculate that. And in this particular case, the number of purchase orders was actually given, so we don't calculate it. We are told that there are 400 purchase orders for standard and that there are 500 purchase orders, again from the material that we got out of our textbook. Therefore, we need to now actually do some more division. So let's see, if I take 36 and I'm going to divide that by the sum of 400 plus 500, and that gives me $40 per purchase order. The next area of cost is our design. Our design costs in total are given to us as $40,000. It tells us that they're to be allocated based on a special study. So it actually is giving us that information saying that it's a special study. So we're going to just leave that in there. And then we'll go down to marketing. So our marketing is $39,000. This is going to be based on sell price. This is special study. Okay. And last but not least, we have administrative. And we go over and learn that that is 48, and it's based on admin increases, and it says that it's based on direct labor. So let's go take a look at that. So this is direct labor costs. Let's see what we have. So in this particular thing, we know that we have let's see what we're told here. Direct labor cost per job. So if we have 400 jobs and we multiply it by the $180 per job, we'll get the 72,000, and this is actually dollars, which is different than the others. So let's throw that dollar sign in. And let's do it the same for this. So we will have the 200 special jobs, and in this case we'll multiply that. Whoops, let's try that again. So we will have the we have 200 special jobs, and we're going to multiply that by the $200 per. We'll get $40,000. So in this case, we actually need to say we're going to take this divided by the sum of these. And when we put this out, I'm going to take that out another couple decimal places. So this would be the per dollar of direct labor, manufacturing labor cost. So I think that that actually will give us the areas that we need we should fill this in as well. So this is marketing costs percentage of revenue, so it's 5%. So let's put this in as 0.05, and we can now convert that as well. So this is going to be 0.05 per dollar of sales. Therefore, we are finished that area. Now we can go use this information to calculate the costs of those jobs. So in our step 2 here, where we actually have to calculate the cost of the jobs, we are going to actually start with the cost of supplies. So we have standard, and we have special. Our first category is supplies. And in the standard, we are told that the cost of supplies, no different than before, right? So let's go back up to the information that we got from the book. Cost of supplies are $200 for every single job. So that gives us $80,000 for the standard. And again, the cost of supplies are $250 for the 200 special jobs, and that gives us $50,000 worth of supply cost for that. Direct manufacturing labor. So what do we know about this area? This area again is the same. We know that we have $180 times the 400 jobs. In this area we have $200 times the 200 jobs. Now don't forget, when we're doing a ABC system or we're doing a standard simple system, the first two categories, your direct manufacturing or direct materials and your direct labor, those are always the same. The thing that we're doing differently is how we allocate the overhead. So the overhead piece is the piece that's different between the simple structure versus the activity-based cost structure. So when we get down to indirect, which is our overhead area that are allocated, here's where the difference comes in. So we're going to have machine operations, and for our standard, we have calculated that we will have $25, right, times, and I'm going to actually make this a absolute value because I'm going to copy the formula. So I'm going to multiply it by the number of hours, which will give me $100,000. And I'm going to copy this formula over. So again, I made this an absolute reference, so it's saying $25 times the 2,000 gives me 50. $25 times the 4,000 gives me 100. So let's take a look and now do setup. Again, I'm going to say setup is $30. I'll make that an absolute value. I multiply that by, in this case, 1,600 standard. That gives me 48. I'm going to just move that across, and that takes care of my special. If we didn't make this an absolute value, you'll get a different number. You should be looking at $30 per setup hour times 1,400 setup hours gives us the 42. We'll do purchase orders. So in this case, again, we'll take the $40 per purchase order. We absolute value it. We multiply that by the 400 purchase orders that will be done. That gives us a total cost of $16,000. If we take our $40 times 500, we get $20,000 for the special orders. In the design area, we were told that there was a special study that was done. So in that special study, we're told that the design costs are $8,000 for the standard, and the special study tells us that the special should end up with $32,000. So that's just straightforward. We had paid for a study, the information came out, so we will use the information that we have. Marketing. Now in the marketing area, we have to consider we're going to take the 5 cents on every dollar of sales, right? And we're going to multiply that by, we have $400 jobs, and we're going to sell each job for $1,200 a piece. So this should give us $24,000. And again, if we want to look at this, we say that we'll take 5 cents and we will multiply that by our sell price. In this particular case, we have 200 jobs, and each of those jobs is being sold for $1,500 a piece. So we will put that in, and that'll be a total cost of $15,000. Our administration. So in this particular area, administration is going to be a little more than 42 cents for that. I'm going to multiply that by the 72 that we calculated, and I'm going to copy that formula over. So we'll take a little more than 42 cents and we multiply it by the 40, and that's how we get the 17. So now we can add these up and sum up the total of all of these. Whoops, I guess I forgot the 80 here. So that is the total. We're going to move this one and total our special as well. Let's throw in some formats. Let me try this again here. And let's also calculate a cost of each job. So if we take the 378,000 and we divide it by the number of jobs, let's do the same for this, and then we'll go change the decimal points, and we can see in a comparison basis the differences between. So on a cost per job basis, we're looking at $947 for a standard versus $1,051, or on a special we're looking at $1,330 versus $1,121. So we could see And let's do a quick comparison to just put these together. If we look at part 3, it asks us to do a comparison. So let's do that. So if we have a simple versus an activity-based costing, and then let's take the difference, which we're going to go simple minus ABC. So let's do that. So for our standard, we're just going to copy this. Here's what a standard would cost. Here's what our special would cost. Here's what and then let's do this minus this. We'll copy this over. And let's format this up here. So these are dollars. And let's give us a difference right here. So if we look in a simplistic way and compare these, right, we see that relative to the ABC system, the simple costing system overcosts these standard jobs and undercosts the special jobs. Now, both types of jobs needed 10 machine hours per job. So in the simple system, they're allocated the $671 because they both use the same number of hours. So machine hours, since they were both 10 machine hours to make a standard and 10 machine hours to make a special, you see that the overhead was allocated the same, because we allocated it based on machine hours. Now you can see that the overhead was allocated significantly different if we broke this out in activity-based costing. So in this case, the activity-based cost study reveals that each standard job consumes less of the indirect resources, such as setup, right? POs, design costs, and therefore it should not be allocated as much. So I think this analysis really does show that we need to take a look at these things. So if we look at number 4 here, and it asks us in number 4 to use the new cost information to help management, well, what would we come up with here? So if we were to look at that, if we look at the standard cost, so let's look at this, and we use this ABC cost system to maybe change our pricing. So let's look. So if Quick Print was making on every standard job right now, right, if we go up to this area and we look at their standard jobs, and they're charging $12 and $15. So if we were going to look at this to look at pricing, we would actually say that they charge, so from a price standpoint, they would have, let's go put this together, 15 and 12. Okay. Now, if they do this and they look at on a simple basis, using the simple structure, the cost then, right, for each job would end up being this and this. And if we look at the difference of sell price minus cost, this would be the profit based on a simple system. And if we look at this as a percentage, let's put this in as a percentage. Based on a simple system, right now, we would have a 12% margin. So this would be our profit, or our gross margin. And this is our gross margin percent. based on a simple. Now we can see that if we had done this based on a activity-based costing, let's put our cost in and our cost, which would then give us gross margin of $253 and $169, which again as a percentage looks a little different. So from this standpoint, if we were looking at this, depending on the market competitiveness, QuickPrint may want to reprice these different jobs, or it may choose to market standard jobs more aggressively than before, because standard jobs actually make a higher contribution margin or a gross margin percentage. Gross margin percentage. You can see that 21% of every standard job is going to cover the other expenses. QuickPrint can also use activity-based costing information to improve its own operation. So we could examine each one of these indirect cost categories and analyze whether it's possible to deliver the same level of service but to actually use fewer resources. So if we could find a way to reduce the per unit cost driver, then these would actually also improve. So I think that this really shows us where the rubber meets the road in this particular area. If our pricing is set based on using a simple based cost structure, and this is how we're looking at things, again, we clearly are mismatching a little bit of this. And I think the activity-based structure provides us with so much more information for us to more accurately analyze our business.